Hey, Rumcasters. If Will and I sound a little different than usual this episode, do not adjust your headphones. Will was battling some fierce allergies when we recorded, and I somehow managed to forget to turn on my studio microphone for this recording session, leaving my laptop mic to make up for that. So we think the episode still sounds plenty good enough to release and that you'll enjoy it, though you might hear some slight differences in our voices, and we wanted to give you a quick heads up. Okay, on to the show. Hey there, Rumcasters! We're back with another installment of the Rumcast, the podcast that talks exclusively about all things rum-related with the people who love and shape it. My name is John Gullah, and with me to talk rum, as always, is Will Hookinga. We've got a great episode for you today with Mai Tai expert Kevin Crossman, but before we get to that interview, Will, tell me what's in your glass lately.
What's in my glass right now is a freshly drained Mai Tai, which I'll talk about during the interview. We just wrapped up the interview with Kevin Crossman. It was great. We talked all things Mai Tais, but I wanted to share a little laugh that I had, partially at your expense. I haven't told you about this yet, but I was waiting for you to refer to this podcast as a program during the intro, and you didn't. So, you kind of didn't set me up properly. But, avid listeners will know I've been picking at you a bit at this for referring to the show as a program, which I find to be very old-fashioned sounding. But I was sitting on my couch watching something the other night. I don't remember what it was, but those progressive insurance commercials that are on right now with the guy who helps homeowners who are turning into their parents, like not sound like their parents. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe it's because I'm getting older, but those commercials are like hilarious to me. I always laugh at them. But there's one where he's coaching them on things, and there's a line where they're sitting around a TV, and he goes, "They're not programs, they're TV shows." And the first thing I thought of was you. I know he was talking about TV shows, but I feel like we can apply that to podcasts as well. They're not programs, they're shows, they're podcasts, they're whatever. But I had to throw that at you right here, right off the bat before we get into this episode. But
I'm not even going to lie. You're the second person to tell me that.
Yes. Well, whoever the other person was, high five to you from me.
My kids actually pointed that out when it came on. They're like, "Dad, that's you." Oh no!
Wait, no, they heard it on the commercial and they said that about you?
Yes, they heard it on the commercial, and no, it wasn't about the program reference. It was another one, but it's the same series.
Okay,
and they were like, "That's Dad." So yes, you're the second person to now tell me that. Apparently, I'm getting old, and
you did buy a house not too long ago. I know it wasn't the first home you had purchased, but you went through a remodel, and so yeah, you're turning into your parents. It's
Will,
okay.
I'm gardening right now. This is the thing. I'm gardening, so it happens. Fortunately, rum is around to keep us alive and young, right?
That's right. So rum is around. Rum is great. We're going to talk about rum on the show. We're going to talk about the Mai Tai, which longtime listeners will know is a drink that had a lot to do with me finding my way into the rum world, kind of tumbling down the rum rabbit hole. Before we get into that, though, one of the things we want to try to do with this show is to hopefully talk about rums that we think are interesting, help people find their way, navigate the rum world, find interesting stuff to try and stuff like that. So a lot of times we share things we've been drinking lately. Almost all of the time, that is stuff that you and I, have just purchased ourselves. Occasionally, distilleries, brands, whatever, will send us stuff. And anytime, we share something that has been provided to us in that way, we like to be transparent about it and just say, hey, this isn't stuff that we bought. This is stuff that was sent to us. So giving you all the full details, but sometimes we don't always share everything that's sent to us, but we got a box of rum goodies from the folks at Kohana Distillers that is on Oahu in Hawaii. Really interesting distillery. It's one of the kind of handful, or what I like to call kind of the new wave of American rum distilleries that are growing their own sugarcane, distilling rum from sugarcane juice. And that's one of the things that's really exciting to me about the category of American rum are these producers that are growing sugarcane in different parts of the country. You'll find it in places you don't always expect. I mean, Hawaii, it kind of goes hand in hand there, but there's also places in Louisiana, Florida, Georgia, So you'll find some unexpected sugarcane rums out there. But this one, it was interesting to us. They sent us some samples of 5 different rums, and we wanted to talk about it because it's interesting in just the setup of what the distillery is. There aren't that many producers in the U.S. distilling rum from fresh sugarcane juice that they grow themselves. So hey, that's interesting. But B, we both enjoyed the rum and just wanted to kind of share our impressions and thoughts on it. But I think one of the things that we were both really curious about with this rum was Kohana has one thing that they kind of put front and center about their approach is it's all about the sugarcane varietals. So they use a number of kind of heirloom Hawaiian sugarcane varietals. Some of the varietals that were brought to Hawaii, over 1,000 years ago from Pacific Islanders that brought sugarcane from, the South Pacific all the way across the Pacific Ocean to the Hawaiian Islands. Sugarcane wasn't native to Hawaii, it was brought there. And, they worked with someone at the University of Hawaii to kind of like find the right varietals and stuff. And so part of their philosophy is really focusing in on each varietal and the unique flavor, notes, etc., the impact it makes on the rum. So they take the same distillation approach, but everything is single varietal. So they're trying to like weed
isolate
out all
the variable.
Exactly. Isolate the variables so that the only variable is the varietal sugarcane. So they're distilling it the same way, they're fermenting it the same way, trying to do everything the same way, except that one variable in the equation, other than time, obviously, is the sugarcane varietal. And this was a question that I've had for a while because I've heard so many conflicting opinions on this from distillers, from producers, from rum enthusiasts. Of like how much of a difference does the sugarcane varietal make on the final product as opposed to fermentation, distillation methods, things
all
like
those
that.
other
How much is using a different varietal really going to change what you taste in the glass at the end of the day? And I've talked to experienced distillers who have worked with multiple sugarcane varietals to make a sugarcane juice rum, and I've had some of them tell me, I really don't think the varietal makes all that much of a difference whatsoever. And I've had others obviously who feel very differently, and that the varietal makes a big difference. And so one of the cool things about getting these rums from Kohana was that 3 of them were unaged fresh cane juice rums from 3 distinctly different cane varietals. And so we had this opportunity to kind of sit down, you and I did, and kind of taste them back to back to back and really kind of sort through our feelings and be like, do we detect different things there? And so it was a really cool experience. What were kind of your key takeaways from the experience with these rums?
So first thing I'll say is this is the best algebra experiment ever, right? This is rum algebra that they're doing with isolating the variable.
Isolate the variables and solve for X.
Exactly. And I had fun doing it. One of the coolest things, like you mentioned, is just can you detect the real big differences from the different varietals? They're labeled on the bottle there. So you get to see not only the varietal of cane, but when it was produced. They give you the date,
the harvest
as well.
And,
the harvest date, right. Because you have to expect that even some varietals may have some variety, I guess, maybe, right? Within themselves.
Seasonal changes, things like that.
Right. So I thought that was really, really good approach that they're taking. So what was fun about doing that, Will, is that we got to do that together over Zoom and get our own takes on it. So here's what I thought. I'll start by saying when we first did it together, I detected a little bit of difference between the 3, and I did have a favorite.
And to point out the 3 varietals that we had, because I know some listeners out there have probably maybe been to Kohana or maybe they have some bottles at their house. So the 3 cane varietals that we had were Kea, Mahaiula, and Pakawele.
I'm glad you said them. Thank you.
I'm not gonna vouch for my own, abilities at Hawaiian pronunciations. I don't know. I feel like I'm at least 50% of the way there with all of those. We'll see.
Yeah, but those 3 varietals are what we had to experience, and I'll say right up front that the Kea was definitely my favorite of the 3. I thought it had the right balance of the sweetness versus the grassiness there from the fresh pressed cane juice. It really, really is good. But what I was going to point out to you is, well, I think when we tasted them together, I found that there were just subtle differences.
Yeah.
And I want to say that you felt the same then.
I did, yeah. To me, it was interesting. I felt like I detected the more pronounced differences on the nose, particularly with
Right.
that Pacawele.
Right.
That one for me had this like salty cured meat kind of note to
Yeah.
it that was just like turned up to 11 on that one
Yeah.
on the nose, as opposed to the other ones. It was much more dialed back. But and the other interesting thing is you got a lot of that like briny, pungent punchiness on the nose from all three of them. And I found on the palate there was much tamer than I expected based on the nose. Just,
Yeah.
you know, a little bit of grass, but really a lot more of that just kind of nice sweetness, like a little bit of bubble gum from them, very fresh tasting, but not as much of those like you know, aggressive kind of pungent, funkier notes that I got on the nose. But I would agree with you that I felt like the differences were subtle, particularly for me between the Kea and the Mahaiula varietals felt pretty close. But that Pacawele, which is the one that I mentioned on the nose, stood out the most. That one on the palate as well felt pretty distinct to me from the other two, where I described those as having subtle differences. That one was more kind of like, oh yeah, so like my key takeaway was, I guess like if I have to put myself on one camp, it's like it seems to me like there's something to this different varietals giving you different stuff in the rum that you make, even when that's the only thing changed. Like I think there's something to that, and it's actually interesting. I forgot about this, but we talked about this with Francisco from Paranubes on the previous episode. He talked about how Jose Luis, their distiller down there in Oaxaca, surprised them. He usually does a blend of, I think, 4 different cane varietals in Paranubes, and he was like, hey, I decided to just use one of these varietals. And one of the questions I had for Francisco was like, how much like did it taste distinctly different? And he said, absolutely. You can go back and listen to the episode if you didn't catch that one. It was great for a number of reasons, but that was one part of the conversation. And Francisco was like, yeah, definitely makes a big difference. So that's where I am with the whole thing.
So the only thing I'll follow up with and say was I agree with you. That's where I was when we started and did our exercise together, which was not blind. We just, tasted through them.
Right.
I went back and I did the blind test with the 3 of them.
Oh, okay.
And
nice.
And so what I found there in doing that was I did feel like the second time through, I did get a slightly more pronounced, again, not worlds apart, but slightly more pronounced different in doing the blind tasting.
Doing a blind.
Yeah. And so I agree with you. Like you just said, I think you encapsulated perfectly. I have to feel like there is something to this. We don't know, of course, the whole background of everything. And we're trusting that Kohana is doing the very best job, which I believe they are, to isolate the variable, as we said. But I think with that in mind, I do feel like this is sort of, I don't want to say uncharted territory is not right, but maybe a new frontier that rum can look and get into in different places where you can grow these different varietals and have some different expressions on those rather than just a single variety. Of course, I think there's more to be said for consistency too in product, right? So we know that some rums are going to want to have consistency above all else, and I think that's also a good goal. But I do love the idea here of exploring some of the different varietals, and even if, it's a 3% difference or 5% difference in the different varietals. And most of it does still come from the process of distillation and all the variables that are there. But even if there's this small variable, I still think it's a really cool idea for people to explore. And I applaud Kohana for doing it. I think that they're onto something.
Yeah, and I definitely, you do see this some on a larger scale from some of the rum agricole producers. I know Clement has done some single varietal expressions. Some of the other Martinique producers have as well. So,
and that's a good point, Will, because if you're molasses, that's an added step that's probably taking away from some of the differences you would get. Whereas in a fresh pressed cane juice rum, you are going to pick up on more of the varietal, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like, if you're gonna do like single varietal molasses or something, where it's like molasses, but it all came from one cane varietal, I think those differences are gonna be kind of minimal, taken out through the sugar refining process. But I mean, I do think there are differences that you get from different grades of molasses. Molasses? What's the plural? Molassi? A molasses that has been like a blackstrap molasses versus a molasses that hasn't been as processed as much. Sometimes those are called like grade A or whatever, but they have different levels of fermentable sugars. You're going to get different stuff from those. But yeah, I think the idea of single varietals is interesting to me. And I think at the end of the day, what rum consumers want to know is like how much of this is legit versus how much of it is just kind of
marketing,
a cool marketing story. And I think for me there is something there. And I would look at those releases, whether they come from a small newer producer like Kohana that is doing everything based around that concept versus a producer that's been at it for a long time and has a long history like Clement or something. I think they're worthy approaches, and it's something that's interesting to me as a consumer, and that's just kind of what I wanted to share with people and give them our 2 cents on. That's just the experience that I had, and I'd love to hear from any of the listeners out there. Like if you've done some of like a similar kind of varietal taste test, send us an email, host@rumcast.com. Let us know what your impressions are. Let us know if you totally disagree with us and you think it's all marketing noise. I want to hear. We're here for all the takes across the spectrum of experiences. So let us know what you think.
One thing I don't want people to sleep on is the coho aged expression.
Oh, I didn't even mention the aged expression.
That is really good. That is my jam right there too. So the people out there, don't sleep on that coho. That's a really, really great expression that they have of select aged barrel. That was excellent as well. So
yeah, my kind of impressions of the aged, it's the coho, which is aged. It's somewhere in the 2-year range. I think it was a blend. The one that we had was a blend of seven different barrels. Some of them were new, not used American oak. Some of them were used, and it was kind of a blend of those barrels, but it was the same varietal that went into all of them. And it's interesting because it's super drinkable. I like all that kind of fresh cane juice character for me, and the age was like a little bit muted. Like there's definitely a strong oak influence. And so I was craving a little bit more of that kind of like wild fresh cane feeling in it. Which I think when you use that new American oak, it's going to dominate that a little bit. But also you have to think about with these younger distilleries, like having an aged product for people is super important. And, they can't sit around and wait for a 5-year aged expression. So, when you use that new oak, you're going to get a lot of that oak character earlier on in the aging process. And like you said, it's super drinkable, a good rum. And but yeah, I'm interested to see as they kind of evolve and get older if the new oak gets a little bit dialed back with some of the more used oak, so we get more of that character from the cane in those aged releases. I'd love to see that. But yeah, super cool distillery. I need to visit there. I love Hawaii, but I've actually never been to Oahu before, so it's on my list now. Got to get there someday.
I got to get there too.
Yeah, we'll make it a Rumcast expedition.
There you go. And we need to have some Mai Tais with some nice Kohana rum there.
Exactly. You
tie it all together.
You brought it full circle. There we go. Yeah, I'm really excited for listeners to hear this interview with Kevin. There is a bit of a Hawaii connection. Kevin mentions the first Mai Tai he ever had was in Hawaii. I had the same experience. My first Mai Tai was in Hawaii. So yeah, I'm excited for people to hear this, and I'm expecting and hoping to get people share your go-to at-home Mai Tai recipe with us. We'd love to maybe share that with us, whether it's on social media or sending us an email at host@rumcast.com. Let us know how you make your Mai Tai. We'd love to hear that and maybe share some of those recipes on a future episode. Well, with that said, we'll get to the interview with Kevin now, and enjoy, everyone.
If you're listening to our show right now, there are 6 words about rum that are likely to catch your eye: single barrel, cask strength, and no additives. Those 6 words are the whole premise of the single cask rum releases from Holmes Key, the sponsor for this episode of the Rumcast. Holmes Key seeks out the world's best rums and releases them unadulterated and at cask strength in limited editions. Check out their website at holmeskey.com to learn more about their new 2021 releases, distilled at places like Foursquare in Barbados, Demerara Distillers in Guyana, Travelers Liquors in Belize, and Clarendon Distillery in Jamaica. Also, you'll definitely want to stay tuned for more exciting 2021 releases coming up very soon. You can find out more at Holmes Key, that's HOLMESCAY.com. Now back to the show.
All right, so we are here with Kevin Crossman, the creator, founder of UltimateMaiTai.com, the search for the ultimate Mai Tai. I've been really excited about this because, Kevin, I don't know if you know this, but the Mai Tai was kind of my gateway into the rum world. Was, I had a Mai Tai in Hawaii and I wanted to look up how to make one at home. And that's where I first saw the idea of like a Jamaican rum and a Martinique rum, and that kind of like led me tumbling down the whole rum rabbit hole. So the Mai Tai has a special place in my heart, as I know it does yours as well. So I've been really excited about this, and I wanted to actually throw a curveball your way. I didn't tell you that I actually have a Mai Tai sitting right here that I've prepared, and I want to get just your no holds barred. I'm just going to show you what the Mai Tai looks like. And I want you to give me the thumbs up, good homemade Mai Tai, or thumbs down, just strictly based on visuals. Okay. So I'm going to carefully kind of bring it into the camera here. So just judging on visuals alone, how did I do? Don't hold back. And welcome to the show, by the way.
Pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this. You guys got a great podcast. Now, in terms of your Mai Tai, you've got a good double old-fashioned glass. Looks like it's got a lot of crushed ice in it, topped with the spent lime shell of the lime and a straw.
That's
no
right.
mint.
I know.
Now, some purists will say that the mint is essential. My opinion is that if you're at a high-quality cocktail bar, tiki bar, someplace like that, that those kinds of garnishes are really important. But if you're making it at home, if you don't have mint, it's not the end of the world, and you should not feel bad about it.
Okay, but that's like a huge wave of relief because I rarely have mint at that. Like, I love the mint garnish on the Mai Tai, and I agree that it sends it to a whole nother level. But like, I rarely have it at home, and so I always feel like a little sheepish sitting over here. Like, I do the spent lime shell, and like I make sure to have a proper amount of crushed ice in there. But there's always a little bit of guilt not having the mint. So I feel a little bit validated now that I got the thumbs up from Ultimate Mai Tai. So I'm feeling good on that.
Fresh lime juice is 1,000 times more important than mint in any cocktail. Maybe except a mojito, maybe. But certainly for Mai Tai, the fresh lime is always going to be a better choice.
Well, you'll never find non-fresh lime juice in my Mai Tai, so you don't have to worry about me on that front. I totally agree. So just to kind of jump in and get started, as I said, you have the website ultimatemaitai.com. I'm curious to know, like, what about the Mai Tai specifically, maybe over other cocktails, kind of grabbed your attention so much that you decided to go all in and do an entire website kind of trying to document the process of hunting down the best Mai Tai. And also your website is more than that. I'd encourage people to go check it out. Like, you've got some great pages on the history of the Mai Tai. You got some great interviews and stuff from over the years. So because you started it, if I'm correct, all the way back in 1998. So give us like the backstory of, what made you kind of dive in and fully pursue the Mai Tai to this degree.
Yeah, it's a long story a little bit, but it's interesting. Back in the 90s, people were creating websites for all kinds of crazy things. And I had a few. The Lip Balm Anonymous site was for quite a while my main claim to fame. I was the subject of a 2-part investigative report in the Daily Show about lip balm addiction, and it got some notoriety. Oh yeah, and so I
have so many questions now, but I'll let you keep going.
So I was making all kinds of crazy websites back then because it was the Wild West of the web and everything, and it was just for fun. And like you, I had gone to Hawaii, and this was actually before I was drinking. We went on a boat trip, and everyone had Mai Tais on the way over to Lanai, and everyone was having such a great time. And then on the way back, a lot of like people laying very still, and it was something about that Mai Tai though. And as I grew older, it became the sort of quintessential drink. And as I got into the tiki scene through the music side, because exotica music and lounge music was kind of big and coming back in the 90s.
Okay.
The Mai Tai kind of became the sample drink that you would always have at the tiki bar if you went there. But especially in those days, it was really hard to get a good one. And so I thought, hey, let's put together a little website just for fun to see where we can get the best Mai Tai and to give people a little bit of education about, their actual Trader Vic's recipe and all those kinds of things. And so the website started back then in the late 90s, and it was sort of a little way where you could submit reviews. And you could sort reviews by, region or by rating and that sort of thing.
So it's kind of like a proto Yelp for Mai Tais.
Kind of like that, yeah.
Okay.
Or Critique for the
better.
Critique fans.
Okay.
Critique
Yeah.
would be more familiar. But it was very low tech in the way it was put together, and I'm not a programmer, and so and then I started having kids and had some other interests. I got into sort of some movie stuff in the early 2000s, and the website sort of kind of dropped, and I was not totally into the rum and all that sort of stuff, although I still would go to tiki bars on occasion.
Okay.
And then as my 50th birthday was coming up, I thought it'd be time to have a big party, and why not theme it Hawaii 5-0
Yeah.
for the anniversary, birthday. And I started getting back more into the tiki stuff, the rum stuff. And of course, this is about 3 or 4 years ago now. And by then, now we're in the renaissance of having all these great rums be available in the ways that they were never available in the late 90s or early 2000s, where you basically had Appleton.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it for like good Jamaican rum that was easy to get, and a lot of really bad rums. A lot more coconut rums and all that sort of flavored stuff than you see now, in even places like mainstream places like Bevmo and Total Wine. So I decided to get back into it, and I started it with an Instagram account, and with the idea that if I want to get serious about this, let's see if I can do a post a day, sort of as a mini blog diary type of thing about what I'm doing. Hey, I just bought this new rum. Let's give it a tasting review or whatever. Or I'm going to this tiki bar for the first time in 5 years, or a new tiki bar that I've never been to, and doing reviews. And so when I started that a few years ago, I challenged myself to do it every day, and it was pretty consistent. And then everyone kept telling me, you got to have a blog, so that, when media comes calling or whatever, it's a lot easier to point to a blog or something like that. And plus, as a way to house all this information that I've been collecting in my reviews and other experiences on Instagram. And honestly, it's a really great way to interact with people on social media and in Facebook, because when they say, hey, I'm going to Palm Springs, what are the places I should hit? Well, I can copy my URL for my Palm Springs travel review, and it goes right there. And then it's a good review for that. So that's how the website's been going the last year and a half or so. And again, a lot of collective stuff, not just on Mai Tai specifically, but also tiki stuff and rum stuff as well.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, it's a really kind of well-organized website. So I love that you decided to take that extra step. It's funny because you're talking about kind of the Wild West era of, late 90s websites. And it just brings me back to I'm having nostalgia now for the days of my youth. And I was probably in middle school around that time. So my friends and I were making websites on like Angel Fire and GeoCities and stuff like that. Was the original on one of those services, or what did that look like? I'm just curious now.
Well, the original Lip Anonymous was on members.aol.com.
Oh, wow.
So that was like 95. But so this was a proper website by the time it actually launched. But it's so much easier now with all this blog software and WordPress, and because I'm still doing blog stuff on the website as well. So if you want to consume it either on Instagram or on the website.
I think what's great about that, Kevin, is the idea of passion. It's a passion for you, and it becomes a passion, and you share that passion with others. One of the things I think we all love about the rum hobby is that there's so many of us out there that have a passion, whether it's the rum, the tiki, the Mai Tais, the drinks, all of that works kind of cohesively together. And when we share that passion with others, it propels others' passions forward. So I love that you're doing that, and I think it's great. And it is a really great website. So speaking of the website, I know a lot of the information about the history of the Mai Tai is on there, and that people can go there. But most of the people that listen to this are probably going to be very familiar to some degree with the Mai Tai history. For those that might not, can you give us like the 101 or 102 version of that, and like, the 2-minute version of what's the history of the Mai Tai
crash course for the uninitiated?
Well, first, one of the reasons we're talking about the Mai Tai is that it is a very rum forward cocktail. It features rum in a better way than it would with other types of cocktails that have a lot of extra juice or other ingredients. And we can talk about the recipes in a little bit. But basically, going back in time, the Mai Tai was created in Oakland, California at the original Trader Vic's location in 1944. And according to the story, Now we have to understand that Trader Vic could tell tall tales back in the day. He lost his leg as a child, and he had like a wooden leg, and he would often tell people he lost it. It got bitten off by a shark. So you got to take a little bit of Trader Vic's stories here with a grain of salt. But the way the story goes, he was in his bar and he was looking for the next great cocktail, pulls down a bottle of 17-year-old Ray Nephew rum from Jamaica, and he makes a special drink for some guests that are visiting from Tahiti. So he puts in the rum, lime, sugar, orange curacao or orange liqueur, the orgeat syrup, which is an almond syrup. Vic had actually grown up as a French-Canadian background, and so he was familiar with this orgeat, which is, is a French origin. Puts it all together. He hands it to the guests from Tahiti, and they exclaim, Mai Tai Roe, and which in Tahitian means out of this world the best. And so, of course, then he names the drink the Mai Tai. And, it's so funny, right? Like all these little details. Oh, they just happen to be coming into town. I just happened to put this thing together. And the drink is called the best, right?
Yeah.
But, it's entirely possible that he had guests over and he did a little riff on a daiquiri or a Santiago cocktail, and voila, they named it a Mai Tai. Vic was not stupid. Hey, that's a pretty good name for a cocktail, and let's keep this on the menu.
Right.
Now, if you ask Trader Vic's corporate these days, they'll say that the Mai Tai became an immediate hit after it was debuted in 1944, but it's honestly not the truth. It's buried in the menu on their Seattle location in the late 40s and early 50s. And really where the Mai Tai became the world famous Mai Tai is that Vic contracted with Matson. They had the steamship lines, and they also ran some hotels like the Royal Hawaiian in Hawaii. And he provided food and cocktails to their hotel properties. And out of all these drinks that he put on the menu in the early 50s in Hawaii, the Mai Tai became the breakout hit, maybe because of the name, maybe because of the way it tasted. And it basically became super world famous because of its existence in Hawaii, and then sort of came back to the States.
Was it still kind of true to the original recipe at that point, or had it kind of, had like pineapple juice like entered the chat at that point?
It's a little difficult to tell based on the stuff I've gathered on that. As an example, we see from Jeff Beachbum-Berry's books that the pineapple is in there as early as or as late as 1972. Trader Vic actually wrote a letter to a customer who asked for the recipe in 1956, and the recipe he gave was basically the same 1944 style, and so it didn't have the pineapple juice. So maybe Vic was embellishing, maybe they actually started pushing the pineapple juice. A little hard to tell, but certainly when most people think of the Mai Tai, they think of the one with pineapple juice and the dark rum float. Very iconic to look at.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of people that really like that cocktail. Most cocktail purists will say that they prefer the original 1944 recipe, which is a little bit more straightforward and especially focusing on better rum.
Yeah, I like the Mai Tai I have sitting right here is close to it's the original 1944 recipe, but the one that I mentioned at the beginning of the show that first got me to be like, wow, that one that I had in Hawaii was very much a Hawaii Mai Tai. Like pretty sure it had pineapple juice. It definitely had the dark rum float, but it wasn't like one of the doused in grenadine, versions of the Mai Tai. So it was a respectable Hawaii Mai Tai,
Absolutely. Respectable Hawaii Mai Tai is not bad at all. Yeah. When they're putting lots of orange juice and lemon juice and passion fruit syrup and all that grenadine, that's where it really gets devolved.
Bringing it back to you a little bit, Kevin, you referenced your first Mai Tai experience, but I wanted to know, was that a straight up Mai Tai, like original recipe when you first had it, or was it a different version of the Mai Tai? And how was that experience a little bit, and how did that translate moving forward for you?
Yeah, and that would have been a great question for me back in '97. Some of those details might be a little bit less hazy right now.
This is 1,000 Mai Tais or so ago.
But my recollection,
Trader Vic and give us a story.
Well, my recollection, I think, is probably how this kind of went down was that I had those Mai Tais in Hawaii. I'm like, okay, these are all right. And then again, I started getting into the tiki thing, and so I wanted to go to visit some tiki bars. And we're blessed that still Trader Vic's, even in the 90s and into today, has a great location in Emeryville, which is right at the freeway from us. And I must have had the Mai Tai there and thought, wow, this is a really good cocktail. And because it was coming from Trader Vic's, it was really good, even back then. And so I think that that's where it kind of started with all of this. Well, let's see if we can find some, other good Mai Tais. It was because I had a really good one at Trader Vic's.
Right. And was the Trader Vic's recipe at that point, was it still like the original one, or was it like, I think I recall reading something on your site about being able to order it at Trader Vic's and say you want it the old way or something like that. So did they have like kind of multiple versions?
Yeah. So let's talk about the components of the Mai Tai, because it actually.
Yeah, definitely. We should talk about that. Some people are probably listening. I'm like, what? I still don't know what's in a Mai Tai.
so the 1944 recipe is an ounce of lime juice, half an ounce of the orange curacao, half an ounce of orgeat, a 1/4 ounce of rock candy syrup, demerara syrup, rich simple syrup, something like that, along with 2 ounces of an aged rum. And we can talk about, what type of rum there. Mm-hmm. So that's your sort of 5 ingredient of a Mai Tai, shaken with crushed ice. Dump the ice into an old fashioned glass with the mint and the spent lime shell to make like a little island, country type thing. And the way that Trader Vic's sort of started doing stuff, and I'm not sure exactly when this started, but certainly was employed back then, was that in a high volume restaurant, they can save a step by combining the orgeat and the curacao and the rock candy syrup into a concentrated Mai Tai mix that at the time was only available for quote unquote industrial use. Okay. So they would have it in their restaurants, and there was, chain, and still is a chain of restaurants. And in theory, they could sell it to other people as well. So the idea was that you can combine 3/4 of an ounce of this super rich concentrate along with the lime juice and the rum, and then you can make your Mai Tai faster. And so if you ordered a Mai Tai back then, that's what you would get. But if you in the 90s, if you asked for an old way or scratch Mai Tai, they would actually make all the ingredients. Good news is, because again, even though Trader Vic's influenced a lot of this craft cocktail stuff with all these great recipes of the decades in the past, they're also following the trends of craft cocktails these days. And so if you go to the Emeryville Trader Vic's and you order a Mai Tai, you will get a scratch 1944 Mai Tai by default under most circumstances, unless they're doing some sort of event or something where they have to do a lot of high volume stuff.
They've gone back to their roots.
Yeah.
You touched a little bit on 2 ounces of aged rum. And I think what the story, that I remember hearing is, the legendary 17-year-old Ray and Nephew rum, as well as an aged Martinique rum being the original components of the Mai Tai. And I might be getting that wrong, so feel free to correct me if I am. But so what is kind of the journey of the rum portion of the equation? Like, I know it started with that. Obviously, the 17-year-old Ray and Nephew didn't stay around forever. That changed and evolved over the years. But I think for most people listening, they maybe have a book like Smuggler's Cove that points out, Jamaica Martinique as kind of being the go-to combination. How do you see that, and what was kind of the evolution of that like?
Yeah, I think, looking at the evolution of the rums in the Trader Vic's formula actually tells us a lot about how we can approach experimenting with the Mai Tai at home. And so, as we noted, the original rum was the 17-year-old Ray and Nephew from Jamaica. So back then, for sure, super pot still, aged, tropical aging. So it would have been a really good rum. Now, according to lore, the Mai Tai was so popular, all the supplies of the 17-year-old ran out really quickly. So they switched to the 15-year. Well, probably pretty close, right? Then, even the 15-year starts to run out. And so Vic's thinks to himself,
can't stop selling this drink.
Maybe we can stretch the supplies of the 15-year by combining it with a lower aged sort of a black Jamaican rum like Karuba or Red Heart at the time. Okay. And so it's, the first adjusted formula is an ounce of this 15-year-old and an ounce of the Karuba. And then later on in the 50s, he had the second adjusted ratio, according to Trader Vic's, which called for an ounce of Martinique rum to pair with an ounce of this Jamaican rum. And by then,
that's when the Martinique enters the picture, is a few years into it.
Yeah. And so Vic was already starting to do like sort of white labeling of Trader Vic's Mai Tai rums by the 1950s, which working with Ray and Nephew and other companies back then. Now, this 1 ounce of Martinique, 1 ounce of Jamaican was published when Vic had to officially release the recipe due to a lawsuit with Don the Beachcomber. We can kind of talk about that. It was also published in the widely influential 1972 Trader Vic's Bartender's Guide. But, you think Martinique rum and you think Jamaican rum, you go to the liquor store, what kind of Martinique rum are you going to find?
Rum agricole.
These days, it's going to be rum agricole, right? You can't find anything but rum agricole.
Right.
And even in the 60s and beyond, there were some references by Trader Vic's that call for rum St. James, which is also an agricole. Now, in that Smuggler's Cove book, Martin Cate goes into some detail. If you read the essay,
I was going to ask you about this. I wanted to know where you fall on this debate.
Yeah, if you read the essay, which is conveniently reprinted on our website with permission from Trader Vic's, he talks about this Martinique rum being nutty and snappy, and very dark coffee colored, which really isn't what you would think what you would describe a Martinique. So it probably wasn't an agricole for Martinique. It must have been some molasses based.
A rum traditionnel.
Right. And so, at the end of the day, though, whether you're being technically accurate to one or another of these different era specific rum ratios, the point is you want aged rum in the Mai Tai. And so, you could look at something like Denizen Merchant Reserve that was put together in conjunction with Martin Cate, where it has a lot of Jamaican rum, but also some of this molasses-based Martinique rum, all in one bottle, pre-mixed. Really
That's actually
handy.
what's in my Mai Tai right now. This has been my first. I'm almost to the end of that bottle of Denizen Merchant's Reserve. And it makes a really good Mai Tai. I think in the past I was always a Appleton 12-year or Reserve and Clement VSOP man. I still love that combination, but I've been getting through this bottle of Merchant's Reserve, and I might buy another one. I enjoy it. It's good.
Well, those guys make good rum, and so I think what you decide to put into it is your own kind of spin on what you think, what kind of flavors you want to impart into the Mai Tai. So if you want to do something a little lighter, maybe use Barbados rum. And, if you really love lighter stuff, Cuban, Puerto Rican, whatever. Sure, you can make a Mai Tai with that. It's not really going to be punchy forward. My own personal rum blend, I think it's important. If you were a good quality tiki bar or rum place, you would want to make a statement with your rum blend. And yeah, you could pull Denizen off the shelf, or Clement and Appleton is certainly a great combination. That's what they use at Latitude 29, the Beach Bum Berries bar out there in New Orleans. It's a fabulous Mai Tai. But a lot of these bars will want to put together their own special Mai Tai rum blend, and that's half the fun of going to a place that says this is our Mai Tai blend. So for me, what I decided to do was my blend features 4 rums that I put together in a big old 1 liter bottle and sort of mixed equal parts of, and it's Appleton 12. Smith & Cross, Plantation Jamaica. So these are 3 Jamaican rums, definitely more pot still oriented. And then the last rum is the Plantation OFTD. So it's about 100 proof. So, hey, like a little bit boozy. You're definitely not going to miss the rum in this rum blend because it's so forward and it's deep aged and all that. So again, I think that what you decide to put in your rum blend is up to you and can have the fun when you're exploring or entertaining guests, whenever we get to do that again.
Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of exploring a little bit, when you purchase rum, do you try every rum you purchase in a Mai Tai? Is that a goal of yours? And is that a way you explore? Or maybe a better way of asking the question is, what are the markers you look for in a rum to get a sense of whether it should be used in a Mai Tai and how you do that?
That's a great question. And, there's a lot of people who probably talk about maybe that at a certain price point, you shouldn't be putting this in any sort of rum into a certain cocktail. So if you purchase something like Hampton Great House, as an example, you guys talked about this in a past episode, right? It's not a cheap bottle of rum. Yeah. But boy, tell you what, man, it's a really good Mai Tai.
Have you had a Great House Mai Tai?
And if you want to indulge a little bit as a special occasion, I think it's that rum for sure is a great one that I would put in a Mai Tai. Something like the Foursquare Exceptional Cask Series, those rums I think would be less the kind I would put into a Mai Tai, only because, especially something like the 2004, which I just love. It's so buttery on the palate, but the Hampton is really punchy, and I think it really it works better in a cocktail in those kind of respects. So to answer your question, yeah, I probably do. Whenever I buy a rum, I probably do put it in a Mai Tai, but that is also my shtick. So if you decide that you don't want to, it's fine by me as well.
So if you take something like Great House, which, John, do you recall what the proof is, or the ABV? I feel like it's around 59 or maybe
That's
over
right.
60.
I think you're right. It's right in there.
Are you always just going to go the full 2 ounces, kind of regardless of proof, or do you kind of adjust the different components depending on the proof of the rum?
Yeah, I think unless it's a 151 or something like that, I wouldn't adjust it. Let's do it on its own. And again, I'm used to drinking 100 proof Mai Tais at home with my rum blend. So
it's funny you mentioned that too. I was going to say, so of the three of us, I have by far the least experience with Mai Tais, and listeners know that I'm more of a sipper than a cocktail mixed drink drinker. But I was going to mention that with Mai Tais, I've had a few, and I had one recently. Actually, Jay from the Florida Rum Society made me probably the best Mai Tai I've ever had. But the one thing that I noticed with it, he used, I think, Hampton Overproof, by the way, as one of the rums. And really, really phenomenal. So good, in fact, that I was knocked out drunk after 1.5 of these in front of my kids, because we were just like, we were hanging out in the backyard in Orlando for a weekend. And so I invited him over, and my kids, 12 and 13, they're not stupid at that age, but they'd never seen me inebriated. And so,
John, you're not supposed to tell on yourself on these podcasts, right?
Well, we were at home. We're not driving.
That's true.
We're in the backyard of this thing. But it was just, I didn't expect it because, I'm pretty well acclimated to alcohol, and, I think I do pretty well when sipping. But the Mai Tai, obviously the sugar uptake and all of the science behind that, I know that and I'm familiar with it. But man, Jay makes a knockout one, and it knocked me out.
You gotta be careful with the tiki drinks, man. You don't mess around with those.
If he's including that overproof in there, yeah, probably a high ABV on that cocktail. So if you had more than one, it might have been a problem. Yeah,
it was a problem,
and a good problem. Knowing Jay, he might have given you a little extra. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a heavy-handed 2 ounces, right?
It was a great day, though. Yeah,
it's funny because I saw someone post on the Rum subreddit. They made themselves a Mai Tai, and they had some clever name for it, but it was basically, the gist was like, let's make like the most bougie, expensive Mai Tai I could make possibly, and so they used while remaining faithful to the aged Jamaican plus aged Martinique. And so they used Appleton 21, and it's not Clement VSOP. I think it's the 10-year, which I think is generally around like $70 a bottle. And I happen to have both of those rums at home, and I'm usually pretty like precious about putting expensive rums in cocktails. I just feel like bad about it when I do it. I'll do it sometimes, but I always, I have that trepidation. But I was like, whatever, I'm going to make this. The original cocktail had 17-year-old rum. I kind of want to see what this would taste like. I feel like it probably won't work, and I won't like this that much. But so I did the Appleton 21 and the Clement 10-year, and like my intuition was kind of like, it was still good, but just like, there was so much oak, like that Appleton 21. John, I know you've had that. Like it has a lot of oak in it, and I was just kind of struggling with that oak in the cocktail, and it really had me wondering, like what did this taste like with 17-year-old rum? Like it's a question kind of lost to time, I guess, but it's one of those things that it would be so cool to be able to actually taste what that one tasted like, but would be way more expensive to be able to taste that now than even using Appleton 21. And because I think those unicorn bottles of Ray and Nephew 17-year go for like tens of thousands of dollars probably. So probably not going to happen for me.
Yeah. Probably not going to happen, no.
Kevin, have you ever had, just to ask, 17-year Ray and Nephew Mai Tai?
Oh, no. Plantation did a 17-year rum last year or the year before. They're one of those.
Was that the Steven Remsburg one?
Yeah, and I at Oakland Tiki Bar, the Con Tiki, they have a rum expedition. So if you drink 100 rums, you get your name on the wall and you get to try all these different rums.
Oh, nice.
Did they give you more than one night for that, or
no? Yeah. they don't have a time limit. Some of these bars, you have to do it all in a year, and that's crazy, especially if you miss by like a couple.
Wow.
Yeah.
But anyway, so when I completed that a couple of years ago, I told everyone this is the night I'm going to finish, and I talked to the guys at the bar, and they put some drinks on the menu specials for that night only.
Oh, that's cool.
And Michael Goldman from Plantation brought a bottle of that Plantation rum, and man, it was pretty good, really, really good, and it was really cool that he did that. But so hey, if you want it, give it a try. But yeah, Appleton 21. See, that's the kind of rum that I probably would be less likely to put into a Mai Tai compared to something like the Hamden Great House, which, again, I think it's the funkiness. So that funkiness combined with all the other ingredients really tempers down a little bit, and you can taste the flavor without all those esters hitting you in the face.
Yeah, for me, I need something like orgeat is such a powerful taste, I think. And so I need something that's going to like compete with that well. And I feel like that a funky Jamaican as opposed to a really long aged oakier kind of rum is more in my wheelhouse. So, but yeah, it was a fun experiment to try. And by the way, I wanted to circle back. You know, you talked about your rum blend. How long did it take you to arrive at kind of deciding on that as your house blend? And do you still try other things? Or are you like, no, I'm good. Like this is it for me?
Well, it's interesting you ask it in that way, actually. So I had a previous blend with 4 different rums, and I switched out the El Dorado, and I had a Kaloa Dark, and I went for some things that were a little bit more Jamaican oriented. And
okay,
you know, I think
Kaloa Dark is it's pretty sweet.
Yes, well, and the El Dorado 12 is sweetened too.
Yes,
so I wanted something that was drier, which is why I went for these plantation rums that have no added sugar, and also to be more Jamaican oriented. And you know, I've been tasting other combinations or whatever, and that's fine. And I'll be honest with you, without getting too political on the show here, I have been some concerned about some of the practices that plantation has been doing with respect to the GIs for Jamaica and Barbados. So I'm not sure I'm in a full-throated endorsement situation with those guys. Although again, I find that Jamaica, even with the continental aging, I think it's just a fabulous rum for $23 or whatever it is, 100% pot stilled, some funkiness, but not too much. I think it's great. And of course, OFTD, a Demerara style overproof, really flavorful. I love the rums. And I honestly wanted to get a new blend to announce here because of the situation. But I cannot find anything. I've been putting together Hamiltons and all these different things back in there to see if I can get something that's as good as my blend, or obviously even better if it can be topped. But I don't have anything to announce today. And so, at some point I got to go with what I love, and I'm not going to yet dump a brand just because of some things that are going on, at least not yet. So,
but the search continues.
The search, yeah. Well, and it's, the search for the ultimate Mai Tai, it's in theory never ending, right?
Yeah.
As of today, the number one that I've ever had it, when I walked into a bar, give me your house Mai Tai, was Latitude 29, but tomorrow could be someplace else.
So I want to kind of like break down some of the component parts of the Mai Tai for listeners who are trying to make them at home and kind of want to experiment and stuff. And I know you've done as much or more experimenting as most people out there. So I want to focus to start on the orgeat. So are you a big proponent of making it yourself? Or is there a particular, store-bought brand that you lean on? Are there certain ones you stay away from? What's kind of your go-to for orgeat?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think really orgeat is the key component that makes a Mai Tai a Mai Tai. You see these variant recipes out there, something's Mai Tai or something like that. If it doesn't have orgeat, it's really not a Mai Tai. Maybe we'll get to talk about that a little bit more.
I second that opinion. You have to have that almond floral little bit to it to make it a Mai Tai.
And I'll be honest with you, I am super, super, super lazy when it comes to making my own syrups. I don't even make my own simple syrup.
Wow, really?
So if you're the type of person who loves to tinker in the kitchen, it is pretty easy to make orgeat, and it can be excellent with things like almond milk and a little orange blossom water and sugar and all that stuff. And we have some recipes on the website.
Okay, we'll link those up.
If people want to do something like that, if that's what makes you feel good to make your own recipes, do it. If you're the type of person like me who's lazy and you don't want to be tinkering, or maybe it didn't turn out so good the first couple times you tried it, you do not need to keep beating your head against the wall. There's all kinds of great orgeats that you can get in the marketplace. We recommend the Latitude 29 orgeat. Okay. It's a syrup that's almond forward. It tastes like almonds. Okay. And it's very easy to work with. It doesn't get cloudy. You don't have to shake it to get it going. A lot of these craft brands that are out there, it may be
Small Hands, stuff like that.
Is probably a good example, which I don't love. You really have to shake it and work it and all this stuff to keep it going. And they talk about the reasons why for that. And I respect those reasons, but I don't want to deal with it. And I feel like some of those brands lean a little bit more in the marzipan direction that is not my taste profile. So again, there's plenty of ones out there. We talk about a bunch on the website that we've tried or comparison tested and all that sort of thing. BG Reynolds is pretty good. Lieber is good.
I hear a lot of great things about Lieber & Co. from people, and I feel like it. When I see what it looks like, it reminds me of the Small Hands kind of the look and like kind of viscosity of it looks similar.
Yes, and it's compared to say the Latitude 29. Latitude 29 is very clear. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking for if you're using white rums in your Mai Tai and you want it to look clean, it's a better rum or a better orgeat than the Lieber would be. And if worst comes to worst and you're using, the Trader Vic's orgeat that you can get a lot of places like Bevmo in these giant 1 liter bottles for $8, you're getting a lot of corn syrup and things like that in there. Still not too bad. And even Torani is not terrible if you're trying to do something, and again, you've got limited options.
Yeah. I think for me, I've done a little bit. Actually, the one that I have kind of settled on as my store-bought brand you didn't mention is the Giffard. I actually don't know if it's Giffard or Giffard. It's funny because I say GIF for the internet meme thing, but I say Giffard for the orgeat makers. So.
I'm a GIF person.
GIF, man.
Yes.
Okay. We got to fight about that another time.
Yep.
I have a lot of people have recommended that orgeat, and I haven't had a chance to try it yet. It's sort of next on my list.
So I think what I like about it is it lasts for a long time. Like, I don't know what they do to it, and maybe I don't want to know, but like the shelf stability of it, you can have it outside of your refrigerator for like months on end, and it stays fine. So, but it is interesting because I think the one kind of big brand, and I think this company does a lot of other great stuff, so I'm not trying to like belittle them, but like the BG Reynolds orgeat was not for me. I felt like I couldn't really taste it that much. I couldn't get the almond in drinks. The Giffard, I definitely get the almond, actually so much so that this is one of the few store-bought brands that I go to only a 1/4 ounce of it instead of a full 1/2 ounce. So I do kind of the Smuggler's Cove recipe. I don't make the rich simple syrup recipe that they do in the book. I've actually lately been doing a 1/4 ounce of that Giffard orgeat and a 1/4 ounce of the cane syrup, like the bottled cane syrup. I think it's from Clement that puts that
Hamilton,
out.
Maybe?
No, it's not the Hamilton one. It's one of the Spiribomb.
Okay,
it's in the
sure.
Spiribomb universe. I can't remember which brand it is, but and I'm really liking that. So I can recommend the Giffard. But yeah, just making it. I don't mind making some stuff myself, but my issue with it is the shelf life of it. If I make it myself, I know it's only going to be good for a few weeks, and I'm not crushing enough Mai Tais over here by myself to do that. So I need something that's going to last a while in my cabinet and be okay. So
absolutely,
that's how I land on it. So to transition, orange curacao, orange liqueur, we haven't talked about as much. I think when most people start researching across the rum universe, there's kind of two things that come up pretty consistently. One is the Pierre Ferrand dry curacao, which is very good. The other is the Clement Creole Shrub, which I've been seeing more. And that's actually what I've been using. I have a bottle of that now, so I've been kind of going through that, and I really enjoy it in a Mai Tai. But I'm curious what your takes are in the orange curacao universe, what your go-to is, and if you have other recommendations outside of those two that I just named.
Well, those two are really, I think, top of the list. And, orange curacao is essentially a variant of triple sec for all intents and purposes. So if you see a triple sec, and again, if you're in a situation where you can't find anything that some of these brands will maybe talk about, if you're using just regular old triple sec, that's definitely better than nothing for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not a big agricole fan. I don't like, for example, there's a Hamilton shrub that is very, very grassy and
so kind of agricole forward.
Yeah, and in fact, I was at Smuggler's Cove a couple of years ago. Ordered a Mai Tai. They handed it to me. I tasted it. I thought, something tastes funny. It's not like the great old Smuggler's Cove Mai Tai that I've had before. Tasted again, definitely off. And so I asked the guy, "Did you change your orange curacao?" And he says, "Yes, we did. We're using Hamilton now."
Wow, you picked it up.
Whoa.
And
that's ultimate Mai Tai status. Right
yeah, it
there.
is.
And I said, "Well, it's not an improvement." And then they've actually switched back to the Ferrand dry curacao. And so, those two brands, the Clement, which is agricole based, but is not as grassy at all.
It really is. Being Clement, it has, and it says on the bottle like rum agricole base, but yeah, you don't. If you just try it on its own, it's not super grassy. Has kind of a nice like spice character to it. It's nice. I like it.
I like Cointreau also. And Druland, I think, is a Total Wine budget brand, and it's actually pretty good.
Nice.
Senior Curacao is actually, they claim to be the original Curacao, and they're based there or something. I don't know. I found it to be too sweet, but they're a brand that's out there and kind of expensive. But you're only going to be using it if you're using it for Mai Tais or cocktails. You're only going to use a quarter ounce at a time.
Yeah.
So if you spend $25 or $30 on the bottle, it's not like you're going to be going through and having to respend over and over and over again. And I would always recommend going a little bit beyond into a more of a little bit of a budget or beyond the budget for some of these drinks if you want the quality to be good. Now, if you're making a big old punch for a party and people don't really care, buy the low end shelf and mix it in whatever. But any of those brands we just talked about, I think, are all high quality and really work great in a Mai Tai. Now, when this Orgeat, this Curacao, this rum combination, do they always work together? Not necessarily. And again, that's half the fun of getting your house Mai Tai recipe. At our house, we use this rum blend, this Orgeat, this Curacao, and they work great together. Might be different from the three that you might pick.
Your mileage may vary.
Right. So Kevin Crossman, ultimate Mai Tai tip number 1 is don't skimp on any of the ingredients, right?
Don't skimp, but also don't feel like you have to go to a $80 bottle of rum when something like Denizen, which is $25, would be just great. But the $25 rums are a lot different from the $10 rums. Right?
Yeah,
so
it's a giant leap forward. Yeah.
The other thing we probably should mention when we're talking about components, the original recipe that Trader Vic's put out was the quote juice of 1 lime, unquote.
Right.
And a lot of people are like, oh, just squeeze a lime and it's done.
How big were limes back then?
Well, how big were limes back then? But also,
how juicy were they?
How juicy were they? But also, when you go to the store and you just pick random limes, you could go from a half ounce maybe to almost 2 ounces, depending on the size of the rum. And if you think that the Mai Tai is going to taste the same with these 2 different limes, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah.
So you have to go with a measured amount. And in the Trader Vic's Rum Cookery and Drinkery book, he defined the juice of 1 lime as an ounce.
Okay.
So according to Trader Vic's, it would be an ounce. Now, we know a lot of people who go to 3/4. And again, depending on what you're playing with how sweet your other ingredients are, if you're using less Orgeat and you have less lime juice, well, then those things are kept in balance that way.
I'm a 3/4 ounce man myself. So maybe that does have to do with why I prefer the 1/4 ounce of Giffard Orgeat in this. Yeah, it's interesting.
And as you mentioned earlier, I think, Kevin, tip number 2 has to be fresh lime juice. I think everybody that listens to this show is going to agree. Not going to have an issue with that.
That's so recommended. It's not even on the tip list. It's just like,
It's
just like a prerequisite
basic,
before you get to the tips. Yeah.
So, Kevin, you mentioned a few different places already, I know, nearby you that have really great Mai Tais, Latitude 29 you mentioned, and some other ones. And I know you've been searching now for the ultimate Mai Tai since at least 2017, right?
Yep.
Have you found it yet? And if so, can you tell all our listeners where do they go to get the best Mai Tai ever?
Well, okay. So I've sort of 2 lists. One is the Mai Tai you get if you just go in and order their standard. So we talked about Latitude 29. Rumba in Seattle is a rum bar. Fantastic Mai Tai there.
Super good things about that whole place. Yeah.
Smuggler's Cove is great. The Halekulani Hotel in Hawaii is sort of a little bit of a different riff. It's still 44 style, but they put a dark rum float on there, and the proportions are a little bit different. And then my number 5 out of the box is in Los Angeles. Ooh, the name is escaping me. Lono. They have like 6 rums in their rum blend.
Oh, wow.
So, again, they're making a statement with the rums.
Yeah.
Now, personally, I find that if I go to a bar and they give me a Mai Tai, I might like it. And I sometimes will order a second one with just Appleton 12 or something along those lines. And often to me, it tastes better. So really the best Mai Tai you're going to get is the Mai Tai you're going to get at a bar you frequent where the bartender knows your tastes and preferences. So as an example, the best Mai Tai I've ever had was at the Kontiki. The bartender, Terry Six, had been there for a few years, and he really knew what I liked. He knew I liked it a little extra sweet, and he was doing his going away because he was moving. So there was sort of a party for him, going away party, and I asked for an ultimate Mai Tai from him. And he remembered back when we had the special menu, he knew exactly what rums to put together, a little extra orgeat. And man, that Mai Tai was fantastic. But it was made specifically to my taste palette preferences because the guy knew me and knew what I liked, right?
Yeah.
And so build a relationship with your bartender of choice, tip generously, and eventually you might get the perfect Mai Tai for you at your favorite watering hole.
That's a really great idea. Yeah, I love that. Obviously, at a larger level than even just the Mai Tai, but it makes total sense that once the bartender, you get to know the bartender, they get to know you, you're going to get something there that's you're going to enjoy.
And tip generously is a good maxim at all times, but especially right now as so many bars are kind of trying to get back on their feet right now. So good timely words of wisdom.
Yeah. So Kevin, we've talked about the Mai Tai recipe. We've talked about all the components. So relative to all of that, how tolerant are you for variations of the Mai Tai, for the recipe? And where is the line between what should be considered someone's take on a Mai Tai versus a recipe that is like something that is just not a Mai Tai? It's different entirely.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of cocktail snobs, and I consider myself to be one. It's always a bummer when you don't get what you want, depending on where you are. And at the same point, though, you should not go into a Chili's or an Applebee's and expect to get the same kind of Mai Tai that you're going to get at a rum bar with 500 rums, right?
Yeah.
So you have to set your expectations accordingly. Now, if the place bills themselves as craft cocktail, if they say we've got the best cocktails, if they say that their Mai Tai is world famous, which is that's when you say your Mai Tai is world famous and it sucks, you will hear from me, and I will give you a negative review. And whereas some other places I might just not mention it or something like that, right? I mean, you're putting yourself out there that your Mai Tai is world famous, and it's
you better back it up.
Full of these other things. Yeah, exactly. And so I think especially if you label the ingredients on your menu so people know what they're getting, they see pineapple, they see orange juice, they can make a choice about whether they want to have that style Mai Tai or not.
Right.
So I think as long as there's orgeat and rum, ideally some sort of orange liqueur, I'd be pretty tolerant if they say Mai Tai or some variant thereof, or name of bars Mai Tai or something along those lines. As an example, I was in San Diego this past weekend, and the Bali High restaurant, they have their Mai Tai is world famous, but for the wrong reasons, because it's like literally 5 ounces of rum, a tiny splash of orgeat, tiny splash of
5 ounces of rum.
Wow,
tiny splash of triple sec. So
is it
technically it's a Mai Tai, right? It's got all those little things just in the wrong proportions.
Just the proportions, yeah.
And those Mai Tais will kill you. And I was feeling it all day after we went there for lunch. And I took one from the team. I knew I wasn't going to like it that much, but I thought, well, I got to try it. So, it is a Mai Tai. It's just not my preferred type of Mai Tai.
I have to ask real quick, being the ultimate Mai Tai guy, do you feel a pressure to always get the Mai Tai when you go into a bar that has it on the menu?
I was thinking the same thing, Will.
Do you ever have a trip where you don't order a Mai Tai at a tiki or a rum focused bar?
There's places I go where I don't order the Mai Tai, but I never feel any pressure like, oh God, I have to have Mai Tai. No, like the whole point. That's my whole,
taking it a little too seriously.
I love getting the Mai Tai. That's my whole thing. Even if I know it's going to be terrible, I often will order the Mai Tai just because.
So you walk into like dingy bar X and you're just like, oh my God, this already looks like a bad idea. But you know what? Give me a Mai Tai.
when Applebee's had that $1 Mai Tai about a year and a half ago, we went.
How was it?
We went specifically. Well, for $1, there was a pretty good amount of booze in it. And we had a good time. We had, sat at the bar and we had some bar pretzels and some other stuff. I mean, that really wasn't a Mai Tai though. I mean, that thing was.
Do you remember at all kind of like what the breakdown probably was of ingredients on the $1 Applebee's Mai Tai promotion?
It was like, Bacardi and a splash of juice in here and a splash of juice there. And here you go.
Yikes.
All right. Well, so taking off of that, thinking a little bit, we wanted to come up with this idea that we could have a little bit of fun with. And it's a game basically where what we want to do is Will and I are going to take turns asking you if something is a Mai Tai in your opinion or not a Mai Tai. What we're going to do is we're going to read off the recipe to you. We're just going to give you the ingredient list and the proportions. And then you're going to respond to that. And you're going to say, yes, it's a Mai Tai. No, it's not a Mai Tai. And you give us the reason why.
And maybe give us your take on would you want to try it or not as well.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So here's number one. All right. Here's the ingredient list: 2 ounces of spiced rum, 1 ounce orange curacao, 1 ounce pineapple juice, the juice from 1 lime, 1 ounce grenadine, and maraschino cherries.
Not a Mai Tai. There's no orgeat in it. And you're so far off in some of the proportions on the other stuff that you can't get close.
How are you feeling about that 1 ounce of grenadine?
I probably like that better than the 2 ounces of spiced rum, to be honest.
Ooh, wow. A strong take, but I respect it. Speaking of strong, so here's recipe number 2. 1.5 ounces of Campari, 3/4 ounces of Jamaican rum, preferably Smith & Cross, 1/2 ounce orange curacao, 1 ounce of lime juice, and 3/4 ounce of orgeat.
If you label it some sort of jungle bird, my jungle bird or something, I would say I might be interested in trying it, but it is definitely not Mai Tai.
I love where your head's at. So that is actually, that's one of my favorite Mai Tai. I call it a Mai Tai variation. It's called a bitter Mai Tai because with the 1.5 ounces of Campari, it is bitter. But yeah, a fun play on the Mai Tai.
All right, here's the next one: 1 ounce white rum, 1 ounce aged rum. We already know there's problems with that to begin with, but okay. 1 ounce lime juice, 3/4 ounce orgeat, 1/2 ounce of orange liqueur Cointreau. Shake with ice, strain into a Collins glass. Add 1.5 ounces of an IPA beer and garnish with a cherry.
Not a Mai Tai again because of the beer, but that's pretty close, and that would be interesting to try.
Yeah, I mean, might be interesting, but I have to agree. I don't know if I call that a Mai Tai. They actually call that one a Mai Tai PA, which is a nice title.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm with you there. I think I don't know that I think that qualifies. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I respect the ones where it's like a nod to the Mai Tai. You know, so they have Mai Tai in the name, but they're not just billing it as a Mai Tai.
Right.
Whether it's bitter
Trying
Mai
to
Tai,
pass it off.
Mai Tai PA. Yeah, I'm interested in the IPA one. I buy beer so rarely now. I went to a brewery yesterday and I was like, God, I never drink beer. This is what rum has like decimated my beer intake. I'm not upset about it. So, well, Kevin, this has been great. I like as I said, Mai Tais are near and dear to my heart. I hope what listeners take away from this episode, what I'm taking away from you is kind of like experimentation while remaining somewhat in the wheelhouse of what a Mai Tai is supposed to be is kind of like what it's all about. And you know, half the fun is trying different rums, trying different proportions to find like what your ideal Mai Tai is. One thing that I'm taking away is having more of a conversation with the bartender about what kind of Mai Tai you like. I'm going to try to do that a little bit more as we are getting closer to being able to spend more time interacting face to face with the bar community, which I'm very much looking forward to. John and I know are both halfway vaccinated, so we're getting closer every day.
Can't wait.
Yeah, exactly. So before we go, I know you've listened to the show before, so you know we always like to do. We kind of just put you through a little weird fun game, but we're gonna throw another one on top of that with our
double dose. Yeah,
double dose with our rapid fire round. As always, John likes to bring the heat with this round. So if you are up for it, John will run you through some rapid fire questions, and I will put 60 seconds on the clock, and we'll see how many you can get through. How does that sound?
This will be the highlight of my month to do the rapid fire round. Highlight of the month. And I'm getting vaccinated. I'm getting vaccinated tomorrow. So
excellent. And now I feel more pressure than you somehow with this to live up to this. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
You were competing with a miracle of modern medicine right now, John. So whenever you're ready, I've got 60 seconds.
All right. Neat or on the rocks?
Rocks.
Column, pot, or blend?
Pot.
Aged or unaged rum?
Aged.
Molasses or cane juice?
Molasses.
All right, you've just lost a bet and have to get a Mai Tai inspired tattoo. Does it say pretty fly for a Mai Tai, My Mai Tai brings all the boys to the bar, or Mai Tai till I die.
Of those three, Mai Tai till I die.
Okay.
I was afraid that one was going to be too good compared to the other options. The other one's really embarrassing.
Your favorite person to share a Mai Tai with?
I guess my wife, although she always goes for the pina coladas type drinks, so it's a nice combo that way.
Okay, I like that. If a Mai Tai was outlawed in the USA tomorrow, what mixed drink would you begrudgingly shift your focus to?
Planter's Punch?
Okay.
Ooh.
Oh, all right. Name a rum that might not be one most people would think to use in a Mai Tai, but actually works really well.
St. Benevolence Rum Clarin is excellent.
Wow, really?
Nice. We'd have to talk about that in a bit. The best place on earth to enjoy a good Mai Tai for you?
Great Tiki Bar.
Trader Vic or Don the Beachcomber?
Trader Vic.
All right, here's your 10-second idea pitch, a YouTube series called Mai Tai Crossfire with host Kevin Crossman, where each episode you put a different rum in the crosshairs and answer the question, does it Mai Tai? Are you in or out?
I'm in.
All right, yes. Excellent.
Wait,
All
so
right.
I have to circle back because you said Planter's Punch, and I know that that's one of those recipes that, like, there's a million variations of what goes into a Planter's Punch, but I love that recipe that's in Smuggler's Cove, which has the 1/4 ounce of allspice dram. What's your go-to Planter's Punch? Because that's mine, and I absolutely love that drink.
Well, you didn't ask me, but the best rum comes from Jamaica. So Planter's Punch is right up my alley there.
That is a usual. Wow, bonus points for recognizing a usual rapid fire question that John did not put in there.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's a pretty good recipe. I actually prefer the Remsburg Planter's Punch recipe that Jeff Beachrum Berry has in his books and stuff. It's a little bit more simple. It's basically simple syrup and lime and good
I think
Jamaican
Karuba
rum.
is the rum it calls for specifically.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people in Florida have been searching for that lately, I know. The Karuba is hot down here.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually, Karuba is one of those rums that I never saw at all, and I've just recently been seeing it in some places here in Nashville. So I haven't tried it yet. It's one of those that, like, I'm curious to get your take. How different is it from something like Myers, for example? Like, is it a lot better than Myers?
It is better.
Okay.
Some people say it's a lot better, and I am not one of those people.
Okay, I might just have to try. I mean, it's not expensive, so I'll grab a bottle and do a little cocktail experimentation. Yeah. But Kevin, this has been great. Like I said, everyone, if you're listening, check out ultimatemaitai.com. We'll put some links in the show notes. There's all kinds of Mai Tai adventures, Mai Tai history, and not just Mai Tai stuff. There's stuff beyond that too. So check it out. Kevin, we can find you on Instagram as well. Is that right?
Ultimate Mai Tai. Yep.
Ultimate Mai Tai on Instagram. So
Repping it.
Thank you so much for stopping by and enlightening us on all your Mai Tai wisdom. We appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks everyone for listening to another episode. Like we said, you can find all the links to Kevin's website, ultimatemaitai.com, in the show notes. We'll link up some of that stuff. I'll pull out some of those, articles on Mai Tai history and stuff like that, so it's easy for you to find those. But as I said in the introduction, we want to hear your ultimate Mai Tai recipes. What are you doing at home? What rums are you using? What are your go-to store-bought or homemade orgeat recipes? If you're not lazy like me and Kevin, what's your recipe that you're using at home? And we'd love to see that. So share it on social media, send us an email, host@rumcast.com, whatever your jam is, do that. But John, on that note, where can they find us on social media?
Well, Will, you have to go to Instagram. We're at Rumcast on Instagram, and we're also on Facebook. Again, we're easing into Twitter. Will easing into it right
Twitter?
now.
Okay.
Yeah. We're sliding into the Twitter realm. Maybe is a good way to say it.
Okay. Are we on TikTok yet?
We're not. I thought about doing a video. Don't tempt me. Well, don't tempt me.
I don't want to tempt you.
No.
I don't want to see what the Rumcast TikTok content is.
I will need a Mai Tai or two, Jay's Mai Tai, before I get to TikTok.
If anyone has any TikTok tips, hit us up with those.
That's right. And make sure to reach out to us on social. We love the conversation and keep that sense of community going. It really keeps us going too. So thank you. And share some feedback with us too. Make sure if you're listening to this and you've listened to a few episodes now's the time. Stop. Give us that 5-star rating. Make sure other people can find us too. And we really appreciate that very much. So that's it for me, Will. Anything else before we get out of here?
No, I might go downstairs and I don't know. I'm sitting on one Mai Tai. I'm contemplating a second, so we'll see where the night takes me.
Do it.
Until next episode, we'll talk to you then.
All righty.